Welcome back, troglodytes, to your daily dose of guitar information, the Trogly's Guitar Show. Today, we have a mystery to solve. This guitar had somebody commission a private help session, and they had asked me, is this real? Because the price seems too darn good to be true. So it's for sale at a legitimate music shop. It was advertised as an SG custom, and it was only like $1,700. So he was asking me, is this thing real, and is it worth what they're wanting? So I took a look at the photos, and I was like, I swear I've seen that guitar on Reverb before, sold as a modified SG standard. And he had gotten some additional photos from the place that had like the serial number and things like that. So it kind of made sense to me that it was just a made over real Gibson SG. And even though the listing had already sold, he was just kind of curious. He wanted to know what my take was on it anyways. So fast forward a couple of weeks later, he messages me again and goes, oh no, it must have been a fake. It's here again listed as a copy, a replica. And at that point, I just figured, he wasn't interested anymore. So at that point, the listing had been taken down again. And I was like, whoever got that just got a steal of a deal. But since it just said listing ended, I messaged the seller to see, is this thing still available? And lo and behold, Reverb just took it down because they don't let you sell replicas there. So I bought it, thinking that guy was already done. He thought it was fake, even though I told him, no, it's probably not a fake. But he got that message at like the same time as I did, because I guess they messaged him too, that it was available on their website. He was so excited for it. But then I was like, oh man, we're in an awkward situation now. I bought it because I thought you were done with it. So even though I'm pretty darn confident this is actually a legitimate Gibson SG that's just been reworked, I'm going to sell it to him for the $400 because I didn't mean to step in on this. That's not what my private help sessions are for. I'll let you know if I'm interested if you're not in it, and then I might buy it, but it's always about the help person for me, and oh man, he's getting a killer deal for this. So here's what I think before really even looking at this. Somebody bought this, was like very confused on how this could look the way it is, and they bullied the shop into thinking it was a fake. And so they returned it. However, just feeling this, I know it's a real Gibson. And the fact the shop sold it for $400 is mind-boggling. So let's go ahead and review the facts as far as what I know here. So 2-pickup SG, it looks like we have a Nashville-style bridge. We now have an ebony fretboard on this, no fret nib, so that probably scared somebody, but that's definitely just evidence of a refret job. It appears somebody's replaced the nut on this, so that probably scared them. And then what's going on with this? So this is a Norland era headstock veneer. It's got the early 70s style Gibson logo. So I'm sure that really scared somebody when they flipped it over back here and it says Made in USA 2011, has a legitimate 2011 serial number on it. I'm surprised the shop let themselves get bullied out of this thing for $400. Yeah, this is easily worth at least like 15 to 18, and that's what I told him the first time. This is a beautiful piece. Now, of course, we still need to tear it apart because it could just be like a Gibson neck that has been reworked and put on some like Epiphone body, but there's not much of a mystery just from looking and feeling this thing. It's a legit Gibson, and the fact that we could get it for $400. I mean, we were both thinking the exact same thing. Heck, that is a real Gibson USA case. It's one of the good Canadian-made ones. It's actually probably earlier than this guitar. This is worth like $250 on its own, so even if it was a fake, for $200, you're fine. Let's see, does this have case candy with it? That'd be hilarious. Nope, just looks like some extra strings, Schaller counterparts. Does this have Schallers? Yes, it does. So now the question persists. What did this start life as? It was probably just an SG standard from 2011. Somebody replaced the fretboard, maybe even did a full refinish, or at least refinish on the neck. I mean, this feels really good, and it's got the serial number and everything. So yeah, standard converted to custom to pickup custom specs. Very cool. Let's go ahead, throw it on the workbench, and take an individual look at its parts and specs. Inside our mystery SG, it's not such a mystery. I mean, just looking in here, you should be able to tell that's a real Gibson. Those are the types of writings that you would find in the early 2010s era and even beyond. So CW stands for classic white. And we've got the long neck tenon in here, as we should see. No idea what that's trying to say, but I'm sure that's a model identifier. Then our bridge pickup cavity, yeah, that's definitely what Gibsons look like in this era. They've got the fuzzies of the woods, either due to dull router bit or just not very good quality woods. Or the fact that they just didn't clean it up before they finished it. But this is what this would have looked like originally. Now, it probably would have had pickup covers and maybe even gold hardware, I'm not sure. But it would have had the rosewood fretboard with the acrylic trapezoids, had the regular Gibson headstock on it. But you look right in here, you see the same CW for classic white. So no doubt in my mind, this left the factory as an SG standard and got converted to custom specs. But let's check out our pickups. So are these actually like 57 Classics or something that had their stickers worn off? At first, I was curious about that, because it does look pretty close to that, but when you really start looking at it, you can tell there's some differences, like how much solder is used to keep the cover on, the colors by the legs, that's on each of them likely to signify neck and bridge, so that's a blue coloring, and the hot one, the red one for the bridge. Then you gotta look at the wire coming out of here. Now some Gibsons, they will have this. Generally they're a lighter gray color though, but that just means you typically have 4 conductor wiring. So the next thing I did was see if there were any coil splitting technologies on this. Unfortunately, no, there's not. So it seems like the only thing not right on this guitar are the pickups so far. But our bridge is reading 14.21 k ohms. Our neck position, 10.5. Yeah, those definitely not Gibsons. In the middle, somewhere around 7.5-ish. Okay. So just looking in here, that shop should have known this was a real Gibson. But I think what threw him off was seeing the tone pros on here. So the guy probably looked at this and was like, Gibsons don't have this little nut locker thing right here. Some of them do. Some Gibson guitars do ship stock with Tone Pros hardware, but it's also a very common upgrade, for fakes and other various guitars. But for the guy that gets to own and play this thing, that's a fantastic upgrade. Like used, I think these are worth $80 a set. So there you go. Just in your bridge and case, not even the guitar yet, he's already got well worth his money. But outside of that, just regular 2 volumes, 2 tones, output jack on the front. I mean, everything's been converted to gold hardware, but you can see the pickguard does not exactly line up right here. I mean, just looking at this, you can tell it's not a Gibson product, or it was reshaped to fit this guitar, because there's some areas that are just kind of wonky looking, mainly right there. But when you flip over to the back, it's just black. So maybe somebody just made this themselves to fit the guitar, had to modify an existing one. But you will note that the finish is like slightly discolored where this is. So that means this is kind of like discoloring the finish somehow. That happens occasionally. But now the tenon cover was a real shock. So it looked like this when I got it, right? Flipped it over. It's a real Les Paul custom plate right there. But it looks like all the other screw holes lined up perfectly, except for that one. So now, moving on from the mahogany body, this is where things get interesting. The neck. So, it doesn't look like it's ever been taken out to me. So that means somebody skillfully pried the fretboard off and put an ebony one on here. And they did a fantastic job. So that means this is likely the Gibson original finish here too. I was fully expecting the whole darn thing to have been refinished to hide some of the rework. But it looks really good. It doesn't even look like they had to refinish the neck. It doesn't feel like they did. I mean, is that even a possibility that you could remove the fretboard so cleanly without having to redo the finish? Because then I started to think, is this actually an ebony fretboard? I mean, the wood grain doesn't quite look like the ebonies that Gibson typically uses. But whenever somebody does like inlay conversions, like say they just stain the rosewood fretboard, which I definitely do not think is the case with this wood grain, you always want to look at the 12th fret, because if it started life as like a studio or something that has dots, like a special, you'll be able to see where they filled it in. Like check out the Chet Atkins prototype video. You can see a filled in inlay on that one. Or on the other hand, if it started as a standard like this one, you would still see a little bit poking out from the trapezoid inlay. The blocks would not completely cover that. So sometimes what people do to get around that is they make the 12th fret inlay bigger to cover that all up. However, these are all the same size, so they had to have replaced the fretboard, and these are real pearl inlay. Fantastic job, whoever did this. I swear I've seen this guitar on Reverb before advertised properly, but I can't find that old listing. I guess to be fair here, in putting the new fretboard on, there is some additional finish checking in this area that kind of goes crazy right here on the side of the neck. And maybe there's actually a headstock repair hiding under here, underneath the new finish. There's no way to know. But the next move they did, they got one of them Norland era headstock veneers, and you're probably asking yourself, well, how the heck did they do that? These things are on eBay all the time. You can pick them up for $100. It's like a thin sheet of wood, essentially. Some of them are real wood, some of them not. They just slap it on the headstock. That's what's got the binding, and that's what's got the logo, the fanciness, mother of pearl. And then you just shave the headstock to match. Now, these 61 reissues generally have really pointy headstocks, so it works really well for the Norland era style headstock veneer because, you know, they were kind of bigger headstocks at that time. I still haven't blacklit this yet, but it appears that, once again, they pulled off a nearly perfect job as far as maybe not even having to refinish the sides and the white of the neck and just have to like spray a clear coat over the top. I mean, looking at this, that also should have told the shop, nah, that's a real Gibson, that's a real Gibson. But I'm guessing the shop did not have hardly any money in this, because the box that they shipped it in said Goodwill, so maybe they picked it up at Goodwill for like $100. And if somebody told them it was a fake, it's like, uh-oh, we're not losing our butts on this. So I even took one of the tuners off to see if, you know, maybe something had been messed with here. But I mean, that all looks okay to me. This model originally came with Gibson tuners. We even get a sweet Les Paul custom truss rod cover. Obviously not stock to this particular guitar. Switching over to the back, things get even more fun. Now, if I were a scammer, the very first thing I would do is take out the electronics and put ones that say Gibson in it. So I suppose I can cut that shop some slack on that because, you know, it's Gibson electronics, but this appears to be the exact factory stock option that it left the factory with. It's even got those same tiny little blue capacitors right there. However, you can definitely tell here, at the ends of the pickups, they're actually only 2 conductors, so those are definitely not Gibson. It wouldn't surprise me if it was something cheap, like maybe those StewMac pickups. You know, they sound good. I think they call them New Age or something like that. They're decent, but not expensive. But the rest of the guitar here, nice and clean. I mean, you've got some scratches and some finish checking up by the neck that we were talking about. But looking around the finish here, I mean, it doesn't look like the neck has ever been off unless the entire thing was refinished. But you've got your golden Schaller strap locks. Everything's looking correct as far as specs go. Moving up the back side of the neck, it's got a nice yellow hint to it. But back here we do have some finish checking like I was talking about. You do see that occasionally on Gibsons, and it's just caused by cold weather checking, usually during shipment, or when somebody's changing out a nut. But there's also a couple of them stemming from these tuners here. But that's serial number. Just because you see a Gibson that has the Made in USA stamp and a serial number that looks like this doesn't mean it's real, but this one, you can tell it's real. Most of the knockoffs are like 2005, 2006 serial numbers. And I think that's what hurt that shop's listing, is they didn't have a photo that showed this. But the guy who had commissioned the private help session, he got that photo from them, and that's what gave me confidence that it was real in the first place. But you might ask yourself, why would somebody go through all this time and trouble? Wouldn't it have been cheaper just to buy a used custom shop or something? My best guess is maybe this had some finish checking from the factory, it got sold cheap, and it got sold to a guy who knew how to do this and how to do it right. So it wasn't necessarily, I'm paying somebody $600 to rip the fretboard off, get a new fret job, new fretboard, new headstock veneer. It was, let's grab a couple of beers, let's do this on a weekend type project. That would be my best guess, but this is phenomenal work. Whoever did it, I mean, if somebody came out with a story article that said Gibson made new old stock looking 70s Les Paul Customs in 2011, I'd believe this is factory. I mean, that's how good this was done. Sometimes refins and reworked guitars, they don't feel right, but this one, it's nice. It's so nice, that's why I believe it's the factory original finish, but I'm ready to be proved wrong here. So, top side of the guitar glows like so. We've got a little bit of a finish abnormality right there. Maybe some sort of an overspray, because that doesn't look like your normal like sweat absorption type stuff. Let's see, what does that look like on the back? Nope. Okay, so back here, I suppose you could say that might be a strap reacting to the finish, but I don't think so. That must have been touched up or something. Now going on to here, we can see that the neck glows significantly different from the body. So that explains a heck of a lot on this guitar. So the neck had to have been refinished. They had to have taken all that off, put a new fretboard on, new headstock veneer, respray all this white, and then do that. Okay, that makes a lot more sense than somebody just perfectly ripping a fretboard off. So the body likely still has the original finish, but had to have some touch-ups because maybe it got damaged or something. But the neck still doesn't look like it was ever removed to me, so I'd be willing to bet that it never was. But that definitely makes a little bit more sense as far as the face of the headstock and the rest of it goes. I thought that was sounding kind of weird to say, but it was definitely played after the refin job. It's got a small ding right there. So yeah, picked up a real SG standard, converted to a custom for $400. You can't make these kinds of stories up. Normally these videos go the other way. I bought a new Gibson. It turned out to be a fake. No! This time I bought a fake Gibson. It turned out to be real. Oh, man. But anyways, now that we're back in regular lighting situations, you can kind of see what we were seeing under blacklight right here. I just thought that was like some weird smudges, but no. Something to do with the finish. How's the back? Okay, you can very clearly see that now. That's definitely some sort of a white touch-up. That's the power of black lights. You can see different hues within the finish like that. So yeah, definitely had some sort of a damage. So maybe this was at a shop, it dropped, it like broke some of the finish down here, so somebody got it cheap and got to rework it. I'm just now realizing I forgot to take neck dimensions, but this is what it looks like at the 1st fret and the 12th fret. Typical SG neck. Definitely one of those wide, thin style necks. And pretty light at 6 pounds, 12.7 ounces. All right, let's go ahead and plug this conversion job in and see how it sounds. Right, I think it sounds pretty halfway decent. Go ahead and kick on some distortion. Now that we know all about this mysterious SG, what are my final thoughts on this? Surprisingly, actually a really nice guitar to play. Whenever something's been reworked, it's not always a guarantee that it's going to be a nice playing guitar unless somebody competent was doing the work. And I've got to say, somebody competent was doing the work. Like, the action looks like it's high, but it's because you got these giant railroad track frets on here. Now, you could always file those down to whatever size you actually want. It's better to have too big of frets than not enough frets. So that's already done. But I could totally see why somebody would have saw this and like sent it back and said, no, that's a fake. Oh man, I just hate to be the guy who sent this back to that store, then see this video and go, what? It was real? Yeah, it was real, and it got sold for $400. So one very lucky private help session guy this time. He's getting a killer deal on this. It is easily, now that I've played it, at least worth $1,500, maybe even a little bit more. I'm sure somebody might actually pay a small premium for this since it looks like an actual custom now. Maybe $2,000. That'd probably be pushing it since we don't have actual Gibson pickups in here, but it looks pretty darn good. Oh, and in case you've fallen in love with this guitar and you want a white SG custom with only 2 pickups, check out an SG Elite from the late 80s. It's not quite the same. You don't have the super fancy headstock veneer. You do get the crown though, but it has the ebony fretboard with the block inlays, and it also has a coil split switch, just like the original Custom Light series. You can check out this review and demo right here if you want to learn more about that. So, troglodytes, I hope you enjoyed this very strange tale of buying a fake Gibson and actually getting a real one. You probably won't see many more stories like that on the internet. Thank you for tuning in today. I upload daily, usually around 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We'll catch you tomorrow on the next one. Take care.